Now we proceed to our presenters. For our first presenter, she is an associate professor at the University of San Carlos in Cebu City. She obtained her Master of Arts in Literature degree from the same university and her doctorate degree from the Cebu Normal University. An alumna of several fellowships in creative writing and art criticism, she received a National Commission for Culture and the Arts grant for Basabala Kanunay, the poetry podcast she produces and hosts, which features Bisaya poets and their works. She also authored an illustrated children's book that aims to preserve the ethno-medicinal practices of the Ati community in Cebu and also edited Dagat ug Kinabuhi, translating contemporary Cebuano poetry. A performance poet and lyricist, Velasquez and her composer, Jude Gitamondok, won the 43rd Gawad Urian Awards for Best Music for the song Usa ka Libo ug Usa ka Panamilit in 2020. Her first poetry collection, Lawas, was published in 2016. Let us give a round of applause for Dr. Cindy Velasquez.
This is on. Maing buntag sa tanan. So let's begin now with the title. So the title of the paper is Ang Sabaw ug Panimalay, Exploring Home Through Contemporary Cebuano Poetry. First slide. So this will be the short flow of the presentation that we will have this morning. Next slide, please. So writing about food always begin with home. My grandparents on my father's side, they were mango farmers. And so it was also the destiny of my father to become a mango farmer himself. The occupation of my father was the reason why at early age I often traveled, particularly back and forth in Cebu and Negros. In a big family where all my siblings graduated because of the mango, I cannot count how many mangoes I consumed in my entire life. The scent of the mangoes inside in a big bakat or a woven basket, it reminds me of my childhood and my parents' stories every time they harvested a bundle of mangoes from various mountains in Cebu and Negros. I even believe that their stories about the mangoes might be the reason why I love mountains so much, but there's more than that. Mangoes are not only perfect for sweets like dried mangoes, jams, and for pickles. They are perfect as well for linarang, particularly the green ones, specifically the balbangaan. And my father is an expert at cooking it, a recipe that he often shares with us. This kind of sabaw is perfect after a long travel and when you feel dizzy. It will not just warm your stomach, but it can literally wake you up because of its unique blend of tastes. Also, my mother's utan bisaya, or if you're from Negros, we call it laswa, is one of the best. Especially if you pair it with a steaming hot corn or rice or mais. Utan bisaya and mais are perfect there, especially when my mother knows that I'm sick or have a cold. Sabaw dishes had been part of my life for as long as I remember. The broth flows within not just its aromatic smell of the spices, but also a comfort of home. The simplicity of just boiling the ingredients to something remarkable is indeed part of the memories of my youth. Next slide, please. So this is the reason why in the short paper, I will attempt to share food and comfort through sabaw dishes using contemporary Cebuano poetry. Next slide, please. So based on the book by William Henry Scott entitled Barangay, 16th Century Philippine Culture and Society, he wrote a portion about the earliest way the Visayans cook, and I quote, Visayan cooking was one on a clay kalan stove or three stones, otherwise known as sugang, end quote. Scott added that staple foods were boiled. Boiling was a relevant way of cooking and preserving during that period. For example, was the act of boiling honey first to prevent it from turning sour. Rice cakes too were boiled in a little wrapper or coconut leaves and were called puso or the hanging rice. The simplicity of cooking through boiling suggests the practicability of our ancestors, knowing also that boiled food is digested easily. According to Doreen Fernandez on her essay, Ang Mahiwagang Nilaga, she said, and I quote, Filipino cooking has, at the best, a simplicity of method that comes from the earth wisdom. The agricultural cycle that we live and live by, the products of that cycle, the time and the pace it imposes, and the lifestyle it develops, all dictate simplicity. End quote. And she continued to mention that we Filipinos, our method of cooking can be roasting, steaming, and boiling. Only much later did we learn how to saute from the Spanish, and fry from the Chinese and bake from the Americans. Next slides, please. So when it comes to nutritional values, doing or preparing sabaw dishes are an excellent method to stay full and hydrated because they are primarily made of liquids. They strengthen the immune system. They are a brilliant remedy for illness and can help guard against colds and flu. In a nation where typhoon often visit our Philippine archipelago, the sabaw becomes part of us as a food remedy. According to Anna Louise Taylor, a journalist who studied the history of the soup, she mentioned, and I quote, "As far back as the 12th century, physicians were recommending chicken soup, known as the Jewish penicillin, to combat a cold. Modern science has since found that their inclination were largely right, and it can be soothing and anti-inflammatory for those with colds," end quote. Perhaps this ability of the sabaw leads us to the feeling of comfort. According to a food psychologist, Christy Ferguson, and I quote, "The psychological links people have with food do stem from childhood. That is a connection we make on subconsciousness level as we grow up. So when we want to feel comforted, we look to what our mothers would have provided. Over time, we build up food association, and there's also a sense of connection with our homes. We like to think of them as warm. There's a definite tie to our appreciation of warm and comforting food," end quote. This unique function of the sabaw dishes to us can be the reason why it is essential to hand down the recipes to the next generation. Also, to cook with the family and share it with everyone in the community, as they can be a metaphor for hope, care, and belongingness. Diana Henry, a chef and food writer, agrees not many recipes are still handed down, except for the sabaw, of course. She also believes that there are emotional reasons for this. You have this dish or the sabaw, or you give this dish to this, or you give the sabaw dish to the people when they're having tough times. And there's something about it that means you give it to people in times of trouble. The sabaw dish is not just a food, but a symbol of love to one's neighbor, building relationship and fostering it. Hence, the soup or the sabaw addresses all the three aspects of health: psychological, physiological, and even nutritional. According to dietitian and British Dietetic Association spokesperson Azmina Guvenji, she explained how, and I quote, "When you're feeling very sorry for yourself, psychologically you feel you need to be comforted by someone. On the nutritional side, it does make you feel better if you have fluid through the soup or the sabaw. Physiologically, it's a vehicle to get essential nutrients from the vegetable," end quote. In the modern times in the Philippines, the easiest way to have a sabaw is to buy an instant noodle, or probably to a karinderya, especially if there's a free sabaw. Struggling also with the lack of time and even poverty to make a soup from scratch. But let us see how the Cebuano poems portray sabaw in our time. Next slide, please. So the first poem that I will share is entitled "Alang sa Akong Bana, sa iyang adlang natawhan karong adlawa" by Teresita Peña. It features the nilat ang manok. Allow me to read the short love poem. "Niyay nilat ang manok ay, gituyo gyud nig lamas og daghang tanglad. Hinay giluto sa kalayok kay aron gyud mo suyop ang lami sa ahos og panakot. Sa iyang unod nga haska nga gyuntawong humuka, panington kagyud og hikop sa sabaw, og pustaanay ta, sa matag sup-sup mo sa bukog, tad-on kagyud sa himaya. Nay ang paabaya kapanikad, o gusto nang magpapaak. Gigahin gyud ni para nimo, ako sabdi ang giapil, ang liog, tiil, batikon, isol, apan, ayaw unyag katingala, kung nganong wala kay makit ang kasing-kasing, tungod gilabay ko ni, kay di ay akua, hala, pagtagbaw." The poem introduces us with the main speaker, of course, who is a wife cooking for a dish for her husband's birthday. Now, in the end part of the poem, the wife mentioned that she does not include the heart of the chicken. Instead, she offers her heart to the husband to be satisfied. But why among all the dishes for birthday, why nilat ang manok? In the Western culture, birthdays are often associated with cakes. But in some parts of the Philippines, there is a tradition of padugo. During the early morning of a person's birthday, his family will get a bisayang manok, a family member, particularly the grandparents or parents will usually do this, and they will kill the chicken by slashing its neck. Then using the fresh blood, that family member will trace a cross on the forehead of the person, and then sometimes to the two knees, and then even the palms. This tradition is often practiced ensuring the good health of the birthday celebrant. Then after the batugo, the chicken, of course, is clean to be cooked, particularly to nilat ang manok. Kinsay nakasuway aning tradition sa ilahang province. Still there? In this poem, the wife uses nilat ang manok as her symbol of her love for the husband. Cooking is serving, especially food that will take time to be prepared and to serve. Indeed, cooking is a way to show commitment. Throughout the entire poem, the persona emphasizes that she decided to use a lot of spices to uplift the flavor, suggesting that she's not tihik or kuripot if using our language by means of the ingredients. Indeed, she gives her all just to make sure that the dish is perfect for her husband's birthday. The persona also mentions slow cooking, gradual boiling of the meat, shimmering well to make the broth or to make a good broth over a low fire. Love lack, or just like love itself, you cannot tenderize the meat by its fast boiling. A relationship is tested by time to make it stronger. Again, real food takes time to prepare and to serve. In the poem Nilat ang Manok, or the Nilat ang Manok, can suggest the value of home-cooked meals made by our parents. Buying ingredients from the wet market, cutting and slicing the ingredients, and eventually cook it. However, now that we are in a generation where ultra-processed food has been part of our daily lives, the poem indeed can allow us to reflect of the changes of our time, particularly in our homes, and how we deal with food. Okay, I do have still 2 poems, but because of the lack of time, I'll proceed now with the conclusion. Let's proceed now with the last slide, please. As a conclusion, home is not just a source of our identity or emotional connection to our origin through food. Just like the Sabaw dishes, they can address all the 3 aspects of health: physiological, psychological, and even nutritional. Hopefully, the Sabaw tradition will not be forgotten for the next generation, particularly since we are in a time when ultra-processed food again is conveniently available. I would like to end with what my father told me about the mangoes in his years as a mango farmer. He told me that if mangoes are not stressed, they will not produce more fruits. Hence, the best way to do is to induce the mangoes by slashing the tree, withholding water, smoking the tree, or even adding salt to the soil. And because the mango tree is stressed, its instinct is for self-defense mechanism. As a result, it will produce flowers to produce seeds to reproduce for its survival. Hopefully, we will not wait anymore that our food tradition and practice can be taken from us. We do not wait anymore to be stressed, just like the mango tree, in order to protect our food and identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cindy Velasquez. And a gentle reminder to our presenters that we only have 15 minutes to present. Thank you. And natin estudyante nga mo-raise sa card when your time is up.